Guardsy's razor. Always take the job if it is offered.
That's good.
Guardsy's other razor. Two types of people in the world, those that eat cake and those that wish they could. There's a number of variations of that.
I like it. I like both of those.
Sicky's razor, only a true Packers connection is forever. We'll have Gershwin again on Friday.
Why don't you put your pants back on?
It's predictions, the Super Bowl predictions weekend as well. You're already on the record going with the Chiefs.
Yeah.
I've kind of have gone with your theory, and then I contradicted myself because I did pick Buffalo to win, and I should have stuck with it, but I didn't. So now I don't know if I feel like I'm overcompensating if I go back to the Chiefs, or I should stick with somebody's going to knock them off. I don't know, but it's hard to.
Every week stands on its own. Don't allow the previews.
That's true.
Go 1-0 each week.
Yeah,
Seifert's razor.
That's Seifert's razor.
That's actually O'Connell's razor. Go 1-0 each week.
Well, that's PJ Fleck's razor too, isn't it? He just calls it
generic Coach A razor.
No, PJ invented it.
Oh, he did. Okay.
Well, didn't he? I think he says he did. I don't know if he actually did. It's Kevin Seifert in studio for the next segment or two. He joined us at the bottom of the 3 o'clock hour. Russo Radio on some Minnesota Wild news that broke last night. And we'll get to some other stuff with him. That is scheduled for 5:30. We're out at 6 for Minnesota Wild hockey. I think this is the end of the road trip. Boston Bruins, the opponent. I think this is the 4th game, isn't it? Am I wrong?
It's the 4th game.
In any case, that'll be on the Fan beginning at 6 o'clock this evening. If you have football questions for Seifert, hit the text line 64686. Is there early? It's only Tuesday. You've done many, many Super Bowl weeks. You're not there this time. Is there? Do you sense a growing? What's the theme of this week going to be? Or are we already seeing it emerge?
Well, I mean, I wonder if it's going to be. I hope it's not going to be Chiefs getting all the calls from officials, but that's been the theme of the early week. It sounds like maybe Chiefs dynasty could emerge. I guess Andy Reid has said that he's coming back for sure next year, and so
he's taken all that suspense away.
There won't be that question. Yeah. And then the other thing that happened was, I think yesterday, Travis Kelce, who's not really talked much beyond this year, and I think he's in his mid to late, at least 36 or so, if not 37, was asked, like, where do you see yourself doing in 3 years? And he said, playing football. And so he said, and then he kind of reiterated he wanted to play several more years as well. So
he's 35.
He's 35. Okay. And so there's every indication that they're going to have him back as well. And so the gang will be coming back together again, at least for one more season next year.
I mentioned J.J. McCarthy before the break. He appeared with Rich Eisen today.
Yes.
And had some things that caught your eye. You tweeted out some of that stuff. I think, Guardsy, you have a couple sound bites from the conversation?
I have one sound bite with 2 questions.
Okay, let's listen to Rich Eisen and the we know he's the Vikings quarterback of the future, maybe the Vikings quarterback of the present as well, J.J. McCarthy.
What has Kevin O'Connell told you about what's to come and your opportunity? What has been communicated to you, J.J.?
With Coach O'Connell, he's one of the most genuine guys I know. And, our conversations have, just been nothing about the greatest thing for the Minnesota Vikings. At the end of the day, there's a lot of things that are certainly above my pay grade and some things above his pay grade. And, he's the one that has the pen last on the field, and that's about all I know. So just being able to just be in the moment with him every time I get the chance to interact with him and really pick his brain, because, those are a lot of moments that I can miss up thinking about the future, thinking about the uncertainties that, I can't do anything about. So it's really just, optimizing each moment and each time I have with that great mind of the game, but most importantly, a great freaking human being.
Yeah, and obviously you can't control what happens in free agency, right? So you're just going to have to sit back and learn, like everybody else, what the plans are for Sam Darnold internally and what he might do externally. That's basically it for you?
Yes, sir. Yeah, I'm just going to control what I can control and attack each day with enthusiasm on demand.
There we go. Who's got it better than you, right? Okay. But how does that sit with you? You know what I mean? Obviously, you're a quarterback. You're a competitor. You're a control freak. Otherwise, you wouldn't be in the position you're in right now. How does that all sit with you, JJ?
It's just all I can ask for is a fair opportunity. That's the one thing that, I feel like everybody's given, and it's fundamental. And, when money gets involved, things get complicated, and, reps get skewed, and there's different things that come into the whole, political world that everyone talks about. But, I really just have to focus on controlling what I can control. My feelings don't matter. Like, I'm not getting any grace. There's no sympathy. Like, this is the big leagues. And just being able to, approach it with just steadfast, narrow, tunnel vision on just the task at hand, which is that workout that day, that film study, that extra, little thing I'm going to do for my fiance that day, and just really just staying in the moment, because, that gives me the most peace of mind through all this.
Catch the Rich Eisen.
All right. So what do we make of, how do we translate that to Seifert's language?
Yeah. So Seifert's razor on that.
Seifert's razor.
No,
yeah.
Nothing really jumped out as super alarming or super newsworthy there. The one thing is, it sounds like, unless he's kind of, smoothing over, he doesn't know. The Vikings haven't told him what they're planning to do yet. But he knows it's possible that they will spend money to keep Sam Darnold or get somebody else, I guess, in theory. In which case he hopes he gets a fair shot, in which case he won't, because you don't spend whatever money it would likely take to bring back Sam Darnold. And then, like we talked last week, how that could be awkward if you re-sign Sam Darnold and then make J.J. McCarthy the starter. And what he's saying is, when somebody gets that money, they're going to be the starter. And so that would be a potential for awkwardness on the other side. And so it just keeps adding data points to the idea that it would be, they would have to really walk a tightrope to make it work for both guys if they were to bring back Sam Darnold in a high money deal. It might be what's best for the Vikings,
right?
To have two quarterbacks rather than one that you really like, but there would have to be a lot of locker room massaging there.
By the way, what is I don't even know how to pronounce it. Is Amor Fati? Is that how you pronounce it?
I think so.
What does that mean? I know he's used it. McCarthy uses it a lot, I think.
Yeah.
Do we know what that stands for? I have no clue.
Love of fate is what it's broken down to.
Love of fate.
Yeah.
Okay.
Amor. Yeah.
It encourages people to accept and embrace all aspects of life.
Razor, apparently.
Yeah.
McCarthy's razor.
Yeah.
He's used that a couple times on social media, but did not bring it up today on Rich Eisen.
Yeah. I mean, I guess I'll give him a little bit of credit for saying, look, we're in the big league, so they can't really, hurt feelings can't have anything to do with whatever decision they're going to make, which to me is his way of saying, I know I'm not necessarily anointed to any of this, which there's probably some truth to, but I think my gut tells me they think, or at least KOC already thinks he saw enough to say, we got something.
Yeah.
We got something going. Now, whether they're jumping the gun on that or not, you were around it. You heard all those comments.
And that's true. He 100% believes, and I think it's true, that this guy will eventually be their franchise quarterback. The question is when. And I know we've kind of referenced this and maybe not made it, clear enough, but there is quite literally no precedent for what happened to J.J. McCarthy this year. There, in the entire history of the draft, dating back to 1967, there had never been a quarterback taken in the first round who missed his entire rookie season because of injury, ever. So we have, and people will think there's a lot of caveats there, but the point is, because he was hurt, he couldn't practice. He couldn't do anything. It wasn't like he spent the year as a backup, even running the scout team. Like he was not on the practice field for the entire season and only got one preseason game in out of 3. And so, to the extent that the Vikings would want to, judge by what's happened in the past to help project what they think J.J. McCarthy could be ready for in 2025, it doesn't exist. So and it doesn't mean it's unknowable, but it's just that much harder. It's never happened. And so, it would make some sense if they're really kind of as big picture as it might seem to they drafted him, they should make him the starter. He's as close to facing a redo of his rookie season, closer to facing a redo of his rookie season than any quarterback drafted in the first round has ever been. And so they have to take that into account. And I think they are. Whether that leads them to the same conclusion that we're talking about, right, that you drafted the guy, you got to play him, or whether it means that, hey, we were looking at this as his rookie season, 2025, and we're going to let him sit potentially for that year too, is something they should at least talk about thoroughly.
If you had to go to Vegas to make a bet, and you can bet on anything, so I'm assuming you can make a bet on this, which way are you betting on Harrison Smith returning to the Vikings? Yay or nay?
Well, I think the now that it appears as though Brian Flores is going to be back, I mean, I only say that because there's still technically one job still open in New Orleans, but as far as the head coaching job. But I think, Flores being back, adds to the possibility that it's going to happen. I still think it's like 50-50 at best. He was very emotional in that last locker room, and I don't think it was necessarily because he knew in the back of his mind it was going to be the end of the road for him, but I think he was feeling it a lot more than he did the year before and the year before that. And so, I think, and where I would land, on that side of the 50-50, like they might do their best in talking him back to come back for one more year. But I think at best it's like 51%.
Do we have any indication that Brady, now that they're spending, is it $6 million a year for on the Raiders offensive coordinator, Chip Kelly?
Is that what the final?
I thought I read the number was $6 million.
Very high. Yeah.
To be offensive coordinator.
But he's a former head coach, and he was making a ton at Ohio State.
That's
probably
true.
Too.
That Brady and Chip Kelly might covet Sam Darnold, because they're obviously going to want to have something happen at the position, right?
Yeah, that's definitely possible. Sorry, Guardsy. Oh
no, we're good.
Oh yeah, no, it's definitely possible, and there's just the math of how many teams are going to need a quarterback this offseason, and the number of quarterbacks that are available is all making a lot of people feel like Sam Darnold's in line to make some money, whether it's from the Vikings or not. And it's the degree. Is it the Baker Mayfield money, or is it closer to Joe Burrow money? Mm-hmm. I don't think it'll be to Joe Burrow, but that's the range. And so, and while those last two games were tough, the big picture way to look at it is we saw what he's capable of, and we probably saw what his ceiling is. And so it doesn't mean that another coach might not think he can get him past that ceiling. But I don't know whether it's the Raiders or not, but I think he's definitely going to have options to play and be the unquestioned starter if that's what he wants.
So does that mean you're leaning more to it being unlikely that he comes back here?
No, because if I had to pick what's more likely to happen, I think it's more likely that he finds it elsewhere. I'm just leave the possibility of him coming back is if the Vikings conclude that, as we were talking about, we're just not ready to hand the keys to J.J. McCarthy off of a 14-win season with a veteran group that is primed to make another run if we get more good quarterback play. And maybe we smooth out some of the things that Sam did at the end of the season, Sam Darnold. And so I don't want to rule out that possibility because I do think that's something that should and is part of their discussions. From a big picture standpoint, we've always talked about it. You take a step back when you have a quarterback transition. They managed to not do that this past season. Maybe 2025 is that season, but I think that just the way they operate, I don't think they're eager to take a step back in any season as they manage this transition.
Kahn's razor, as in David Kahn, former general manager, Minnesota Timberwolves. Facts are less important than a show of hands. Facts are less important than a show of hands. We still have
a show of hands.
There it is.
Oh, see, I missed that. I thought it was to be like always take the point guard.
No, that could have been too.
Yeah.
This comes from 612 guy. Will you let noted University of Virginia alum Seifert know that I ran into former UVA basketball coach Tony Bennett in Maui? Oh, good for me. Hold on. Says he doesn't miss coaching at all. Mentioned he won his NCAA title at U.S. Bank. Really nice guy. And certainly appeared to be stress-free.
Good for him, man, because it was a tough timing for when he made that decision, and that they have gone on to not have a very good season, at least to this point, although they did beat Pitt last night. But I think he's in a boat with a lot of people, some coaches who have stepped down and others who haven't yet, who just it feels foreign. What college sports have become feels foreign to them, and it's not good for your physical or your mental health if you're in that position. And so good for him for getting out and for finding the peace that your listener believes that he's found.
Final couple thoughts on the bowl, Super Bowl 59, which you can hear, I'm assuming, on the Fan. Full day of coverage.
You got it. No conflicts.
No conflicts at all. You're exactly right. What's kickoff, like 5:20 usually?
Yeah.
Right in that range. Do we know who's singing the national anthem, by the way? Has that been announced? You always are at those press conferences where all the musical
isn't Kendrick Lamar is the halftime?
He's halftime.
Right? Yeah.
I wonder if we know who the anthem is going to be sung by. But can you explain? I meant to find the stat and I can't on the fly here. Why, when good to very good coaches are named, even up and coming coaches are named, why would the perception be, isn't it a bit goofy that I think the general public perception is that Kevin O'Connell is a much better coach than Nick Sirianni? Why is that? I mean, Sirianni, I know there's craziness there, but it's kind of hard to argue with what they've done overall. Whatever mutinies have seemingly taken place in the sidelines, I think it's because it's public stuff. And I'm not sitting here saying he's headed for the Hall of Fame, but he's always I feel like he's always disrespected and kind of mocked, and yet they're always competing for championships.
Yeah, like it's always hard for me to separate. Like, do people just like that person more, or do they actually think he's there's no objective comparison, right? Frankly, this guy's in the second Super Bowl in 3 years, 4 years? Like he's in the second Super Bowl since he got there, and he's managed a quarterback transition as well, and they've been excellent, and they also have great team building. I mean, if you look at the way they built their offensive and defensive lines, it's just been textbook in terms of how to build a sustainable winner. And so he's had the benefit of that as well. But there's no doubt. I mean, some of the antics, the Sirianni antics are personally off-putting, but people aren't always able to separate that from their assessment of his performance. But really, all you have to do is look at the numbers you would put down on paper in terms of record. As good as Kevin O'Connell's record's been, theirs has been better. Over those 3 years.
Well, definitely better in the postseason.
Yeah, for sure. But even the regular season's been better.
Right.
So, I don't know how widespread it is that he's a better coach, he's considered a better coach, but I'm sure there's a segment of the sporting public who just is less turned off by Kevin O'Connell than they are by the personal antics of Nick Sirianni.
How many Super Bowls have you covered? Do you know the count off the top of your head?
I was just doing 11.
That's it?
Yeah.
There have been more.
Yeah, you would have thought.
Because you've been covering football for 30 years.
I know. It's been selected. The last one I was at was actually the U.S. Bank.
So your favorite, leave out the local one, your favorite Super Bowl to cover, whether it was the game or the week that led up to it, interesting storylines, whatever. Do one or two stand out for you?
Well, the one in Phoenix where Malcolm Butler had the interception at the end. It was a great week leading up to it, just a perfect place to be at the end of January when you live from Minnesota on a personal level.
Yes.
We went hiking a few times.
Really?
Nice. Good stuff. But the game was just fantastic. There was lots of angles to write and talk about afterwards, and we wrote until the wee hours of the morning. And I'll just remember it wasn't panic, but it was a relatively high stress level from a media perspective when you were pretty dang sure the Seahawks were going to win that game as they were coming into, and there had been this great one-handed catch that Javon Kearse had made to put them in position for it. And I was going to write a whole story about that play. And then somebody else was going to write about whatever happened in the touchdown. And then it got intercepted and everything flipped around. But the brain chemicals that are released in those stressful situations help you remember, I think. And so I remember every minute of that. And that was great. And the other one, on a more serious note, was I covered the Super Bowl in New Orleans. That was the first Super Bowl after 9/11.
Oh, okay.
So
yeah.
That was the first Patriots Super Bowl where they beat the Rams, and the Rams were a heavy favorite. And so it was a great game, and it was a cool story. And the way the Patriots decided at the end of that game that not to play for overtime, but to try to win it with a long field goal, which they did. The halftime that year was U2.
Oh.
So phenomenal, for someone of my age, regardless. But they also, behind them, they'd sort of dropped a curtain, and they had a projection of names of people who had died in 9/11, and just the whole time it was just running. And like for me personally, like I'd seen all the coverage and all, but just like watching, like just name. I mean, for 15 minutes it took to run off all the names of people who died. It was a good way to illustrate the magnitude of what had happened.
That's a remarkable memory, and I don't know how good
you might have been
was,
at that game.
But I probably was and don't remember it. No, I don't.
Was it just me and Youngblood?
I don't think I was. What year is that now?
It would have been
obviously
after the 2001 season, so January of 2022.
Right. I was still writing then, I think. Regardless, obviously people around here always want to name the Prince performance and nothing else matters.
Was great. Yeah.
It was great. Yeah, there's no question about it. But that's a good example, and I don't know how good they were, but that concept is brilliant. I guess I completely forgot about that.
Moving.
And I don't think people talk about that enough, to be honest with you.
And I've seen it, like there's been a few, like, ranking the top halftime shows, and I've seen that up there, but it's just one of those, as time goes by, less people remember it, less people were there that are around and voting on those things, so a lot of recency bias comes up.
So you won't be going to, because a couple of people want to know if you're headed to the French Quarter, but you're not going to.
I won't be there.
You will not be there.
I think there'll be enough coverage whether I'm there or not.
John, is it Batiste or is it Batiste? A New Orleans native is singing the national anthem.
Okay.
The name sounds familiar, but that apparently is who's doing the anthem. And then you mentioned the halftime show. And I'm assuming isn't there usually like a pregame concert too? I mean, isn't there usually? I mean, it's become such a production.
And then anticipation of the commercials, which I know
huge for
your
you.
Favorite.
You can't get enough of it.
I can never hear because I won't. I don't. In the old days, when I would actually go to the Super Bowl, like you don't actually watch the commercials, and then now if I'm in a room with anybody, they're going to be people will end up talking during it. So.
Very, very, very true. Do you think PA has proclaimed on 100,000 watt radio that the Vikings will win a Super Bowl under KOC?
Okay.
Are you willing to second that proclamation? Before you're done writing, will you cover the Vikings at the Super Bowl?
Well, it's not totally in my control how long I'm writing, but
true.
In terms of how long O'Connell's here, like, will there be a Super Bowl? I think he's given them, he's put them on track to have their best chance to get to a Super Bowl, at least since Bud Grant retired. And whether he's going to win one or not, I haven't seen enough evidence to say like it's a slam dunk. But I also think that he's still a young coach that's growing, and there's still a franchise that's still finding their way.
I've asked Gargi this a bunch of times, I think. What do you think in the end Vikings fans are rooting for? Are they, if they know you can get to another Super Bowl but lose again, to have your fifth Super Bowl loss to break the tie with Buffalo, right? Because Buffalo's got 4.
Yeah.
Would you rather not get to the Super Bowl at all? In other words, no guarantee you're going to win. We'll get you there, but there's a really good chance you're going to end up losing again. Is it better to not even get there? Or is it, no. You always get to, if you can get to the Super Bowl, you do it.
No, you gotta
even
get
if
there.
it means you're going to get embarrassed again. And I've told you this before, we still haven't scored in the first half of any of our 4 previous Super Bowls.
Yeah. And no, I think I'm sure there's some people who are really sadistic and just couldn't, don't want to even face that scenario. But I would imagine the large majority of people want them to get to a Super Bowl, and maybe the refs will have it out for the team they're playing, and maybe that will benefit them. And
as long as we're not playing Kansas City, we're good.
Yeah,
we should be fine.
I don't think you would be. I think no matter who you play, you would suggest we're going to get a job by the officials.
Well, we're going to have to overcome officiating on the way to the Super Bowl. However that happens.
Yeah, it's a fair point.
It is amazing that topic, like it's a timeless topic. It has been coming up since the history of organized sports, that somehow officials are have their finger on the button and can direct who is it's as if it's pro wrestling. And I hate to break it to the pro wrestlers, the officials, referees are often the ones who dictate the way things are going in pro wrestling. But it doesn't. It's just a timeless protest that there's no cure for to cleanse the public palette of that desire to blame the officials.
Is it timeless, or did Sid invent it? Because he was old enough to having perhaps inventing it. In fact, there was a Sid moment today.
He was there at the beginning of organized sports.
I was talking about the embarrassing Luka press conference today, and there was a Sid moment. I thought of him. I mean, it's unbelievable how my mind works, and his influence. Because one of the first 3 or 4 questions to Luka was, Luka, just curious to get your views of what you think of all these people who are here to attend this press briefing. I mean, is that not Sid to a T? Like, hey, look how we have responded to you and how special we are, how much we've filled the media stands just to be in your presence, Luka. And Luka didn't even know what to do with it, other than, oh yeah, it's nice to have all these people here. Like, you want to get patted on the head because you showed up at a Luka press conference. That's embarrassing. And that's L.A.
Yeah.
That's supposed to happen here, not in Los Angeles.
Maybe give us a break. Yeah. You guys always talk about the big cities. Give us a break. How provincial
we are. Yeah, it's 100% right. Because that's a Sid-like moment.
Yeah. So unless he had not had the scoop that player was being traded for, and if somebody else had it, he would have spent the time.
Hey, Pelinka.
Disputing. Why would you do that? Why would you make that trade?
Shams isn't selling tickets.
Well, you know what Pelinka, what he tell Pelinka is that he brought the two sides together.
Yeah.
Right? He would take credit for the deal itself. He or Darkstar, the late great Darkstar.
He would not have credited Shams.
All right, here's the deal. So the Super Bowl is this Sunday.
Yeah.
So we have to decide. We give you a few weeks off now. We'll talk about it and figure out what's best for you. It's been a long haul.
Yeah.
Part of me says you deserve a break.
Well,
you've been great about coming. You've been great all year, but you've been especially great about coming in. So I don't know. I also, though, won't want to ignore if there's a big new Viking story. But I guess we can plan accordingly and react if some big Viking story.
We'll see you next Tuesday, Kev.
Maybe we'll just see you next. Maybe that's easier.
If it's quarterback related, I imagine we might be in a holding pattern until at least the franchise tag cycle comes, which is sort of the third week in February.
Yeah, so a little ways off.
Yeah, a little bit 2 weeks.
Well, it's 2 weeks, yeah.
I guess so. That's right. We're in February.
Combine's in 2.5 weeks.
Yeah, we might have to see it.
That's
Tuesday.
on our schedule for February. So, we'll see you Tuesday.
Next week is a break, or there never will be a break.
That's what we'll talk about. We'll figure it out.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay.
Kevin Seifert, ESPN.com. We will chat with Russo Radio in about 1 hour. People are trying too hard, man. This is from 952 guy. Philly has lost 3 Super Bowls, so if they lost Sunday, that would be their 4th, but they've also won one. At least one, right? They won here.
Yes.
They won the bowl here.
I think that's their only victory.
But that's very different than not having one and having lost 4 bowls, right?
Yes.
So, yeah, I think that's a Vikings fan maybe trying too hard to say, well, there's, misery loves company. Well, no, but if they've won it all even once, that pretty much, I think, changes anything. Dan writes, 715 guy, I tell myself that every time the Vikings get close to the Super Bowl, if they go, they better win. Otherwise, I don't even want them to go. However, the older I'm getting, I might be softening on that take. I can remember the last 3 times they were there. I was 8 to 10 years old, and now it's like I really want to see them make it to the Super Bowl for myself. It's more about the younger generation that's never had that thrill of their favorite team.
Thank you.
Going to the big game, which I know that's been the Gargi razor theory for a long time.
Thank you, 715 guy.
That especially once, that we have the 2-week stretch where you can revel in the possibility of winning, or at least being there and being a part of the pageantry of it all, that it makes some sense. That logic to go, I'll take my chances, and if we lose again, I'll deal with all the mocking and the ridicule that I'm going to receive nationally.
To have, I guess it'd be, who would it be? Who's the guy with Tom Brady now? Kevin Burkhardt? To have him on the stage, or Terry Bradshaw, given the trophy, whatever the NFC Championship trophy is, to Ziggy and Mark, and then to KOC or whoever the head coach is, and JJ McCarthy, to have that on the field somewhere and have that moment, play that audio on Monday, the whole bit, I would take it. I'm not going to get greedy. It's been 42 years I've lived, and we've come close a couple of times. We all remember them. I know you like to go through them all.
Once.
Well, I mean, at least
close once
on the doorstep, where we're at least a game away.
Well, yeah, but I'm saying within the game itself, we were close once, right?
Yes.
That's it.
Yeah, probably, right?
Yeah, just the wide left, Gary Anderson. That's the only time we came close.
Yeah.
I mean,
That's
we've been to the NFC title game a couple other times, but we didn't really get
09 with Favre.
Oh, that's true. I'm forgetting about Favre. How can I forget Favre?
I don't know.
You're right. That was
I think you did that on purpose, so I had to say it.
Well, that was the game that we outplayed them and still lost, remember?
Yeah, I remember all of it.
15 years later, I can still remember that like yesterday.
Yes.
Barrero's razor equals a question shorter than the answer is simply not worth asking.
And that's a fact.
That's a pretty good one, too. I like that. Why is my chair... I'm back.
Oh, yeah.
Sinking. I mean, that chair again.
That one chair, it's really deflating.
I don't understand why. I mean, how many years have I complained about this chair? It's like, there's a million chairs out there. I should just change it.
But sometimes you don't do it knowingly. Someone else has changed it, or it's been flipped in there and you didn't know about it.
Yeah, I mean, does Rosen sit in this chair some? Because it was way down on the ground. He's taller than I am.
He's a big guy.
He's a huge man.
I don't think he does.
Okay, just kind of wondering.
But that chair does really make you question yourself. Because you sink right down.
Russo is at 5:30, correct?
Yes, final segment of the show tonight.
That's right, because Wild Hockey will take over from Boston, Massachusetts at 6 o'clock, if I'm not mistaken. And obviously, the main topic of conversation will be the Ryan Hartman news. I think even the hardcores may have been a bit surprised that the suspension ends up being, 10 games?
Yes. Yep.
10. I loved it. But I've always want people suspended for longer than they are. And has he appealed it yet?
I'm sure he probly has if he's going to.
And I don't know how often on appeal they get reduced a little bit. I'm not sure.
I think Russo said not a ton.
But it's the NHL's Department of Player Safety make this decision and this big announcement. And so I can't argue with it. We talked about it a lot yesterday, and it's such it so devastates this club, right? Which has no wiggle room when it comes to replacing players, right? We all know the story about the salary cap challenges that we have, et cetera, et cetera. It's not even worth going into at this point. By the way, he is in the first year of a 3-year, $12 million contract, carries a $4 million cap hit this year, and makes $5 million this season. And as I think this is a Joe Smith and Russo double byline story. Hartman's cap hit must remain on the books. He has to be a part of the 23-player roster, so the Wild won't have as much flexibility once Marcus Johansson returns from a concussion. Johansson and Brodin rejoined the team for practice Monday in Boston. There's a good chance they will return Tuesday. Once Brodin and Johansson are ruled in, the Wild have to make a roster move today as well. They may have already done that. I don't actually know. But it's, I'm past the point of, well, hopefully this will get the lesson across. For me, it's just hammer him. At this point, I think he's a lost cause in that regard. I really do. I don't think, doesn't mean I think he should be tased or anything like that, but I think, I'm past the thing about, well, maybe this will, maybe he'll finally realize the error of his ways. I don't think he's a player who's capable of figuring that out. I think, though, the importance of this is it was a dirty play from a player who has done a number of dirty things and has been, what did we say yesterday? I think this is his 5th suspension.
Yes, and 10 games is the longest.
And 10 games is the long. I mean, by NHL standards, that's pretty damn long, right?
It's the longest since 2018.
Think about it.
That's been handed out.
That's a long time.
Yeah.
And he deserves it. And I was heartened yesterday, like I said, that the hockey community, at least the ones who texted us, said, yeah, it's a good riddance. I mean, it's ridiculous. It's inexcusable. It hurts the team. Makes no sense. Now, again, what impact this has on what the Wild do with him long term, I frankly don't know. I just don't think at this point you can necessarily count on him, can you? I don't know how you could. But leaving aside what I haven't heard from the hockey community is whether even those who are very upset with the move on his part, whether they think, 10 games, I'm not sure about 10 games. I'll be curious to get Russo's view on that.
Yeah, I think most people were surprised by that.
I'm all for it on that because of the frequency in which he's got nailed and the video of this particular play itself. It's just brutal. It's just, again, it's the only sport in which it's even a possibility that kind of play can happen. Am I wrong? What other sport can a play like that happen?
I mean, we've seen some stuff like in basketball and football.
Not lately.
But that was pretty bad.
It's terrible.
He's losing about $500,000 too.
I saw that.
That's the crazy thing. It's like $497.
You're right.
And so he's got 48 hours to appeal it. Joe Smith said, wouldn't be surprised if he does. Now, this appeal goes right to the commish. It goes right to Bettman.
I thought it was Joe Dumars. Oh, no, that's the NBA.
That's the NBA.
I'm sorry.
So Gary Bettman goes and gets this one.
Sorry, Falman. Michael Russo, who's going to join us at 5:30, tweeted this out about 7 hours ago. The Wild have reassigned Ben Jones, activated Jonas Brodin off LTIR, and Marcus Johansson off IR. So right now they're carrying 8 defensemen and no extra forwards, with suspended Ryan Hartman occupying the 23rd spot for the next 10 games. It's going to really hurt flexibility. Just a jackassy move that is hurting the organization at the worst possible time. Speaking of reeling organizations, the Minnesota Timberwolves were at home last night to the Sacramento Kings.
De'Aaron Foxless, Sacramento Kings.
Oh, I just assumed he played last night.
One last ride.
Oh, I had no idea. So they beat us without him. They beat us also without the guard they got from the Chicago Bulls.
Zach LaVine.
LaVine didn't get there in time.
No, Malik Monk was there.
I am aware that we are without both players we got in the Karl Anthony Towns trade. By the way, here's the interesting nugget before we drill down a little deeper on the latest disappointing setback for your Wolves club. The road team has won 10 straight regular season games in the Kings-Timberwolves matchup, going all the way back now to January of 2 years ago. First time in NBA history, 2 teams have gone 10 straight matchups without the home team winning a game. And there was an observation, I can find it here, from our guy, Johnny Athletic. Since Julius Randle has been out with a groin injury, the Wolves have suffered home losses to Washington and Sac. Wolves fans won't want to hear it, but they miss him right now. I'm gonna take exception with Johnny about that, because
as many did.
Oh, did they?
Yes.
Well, and again, it does. I will grant that sometimes Randle gets kind of stupidly blamed for stuff that's not his fault.
Yep.
It becomes too easy to make it. Everything is about the bad fit and Julius Randle. But what I would suggest to Johnny is the Wolves missed their second scorer, no matter who it would be. It could be, and Randle is, but it's not so much that it's the Randle presence that was missing. It's whoever you have designated as your number 2 scorer. They just needed another offensive weapon. Now, on the other hand, their defense, as acknowledged, brought up by their head coach after the game, was abysmal from the start. And, I heard the TV broadcast, I know, Jim Peterson put it more on the basis of, well, they're just hitting. I mean, they're hitting every shot. I mean, they didn't even shoot this well from 3. But I think Finchie was right. Too many of those shots were open.
Yep.
Too many of those shots were comfortably acquired. And we're back to the old bit. Gobert said it. If you make it comfortable for them early, they get into kind of a rhythm, and then they kind of feel fat, and they feel pretty confident in what they're doing, and we ended up paying the price, because down the stretch, I mean, honest to God, if on the basis of what we see from Monk, that guy, you would think, is a first team, not just an all-NBA player, but like a first-team all-NBA player.
I know.
His ability to break down the defense, it was him and the former
DeMar DeRozan.
I mean, they were just clinical. And some of it I'll give talent on their part. But earlier, I would say a lot of it was we didn't get into them the way you have to make it a little bit more difficult for them, because that is, as Finchie said, that's the one thing they can do. They can score when it's going good for them. And I never felt, again, we had chances late. Obviously, it was close, but I never honestly felt we were going to win the ballgame. I just never did.
They scored on their last 8 possessions. And a lot of it was, we're going to set a ball screen for DeRozan.
Create a little room.
Whether it was Ant or even McDaniels. Ant was, I thought, again, abysmal defensively, where guys just beat him off the dribble, and it sets everything off.
Well, he had a couple nice steals, but overall, you're right.
Yeah, steals are one thing, though, but like late in the game, keep your guy in front of you.
Yeah.
And he'll give up these angles, and then all of a sudden the ball's popping around. And you're right about the Kings. Every time I watch the Kings, here because they've won 5 in a row, and I've randomly been to like 3 of them. I wasn't there last night, but I watch them, and I'm left with this. The only thing I'm left with is, how is Sacramento this bad? How are they having so many issues? Because they always look great against us. Conversely, we go out there and always play great. I don't know if it's the vibe, the building, if they like being in Sac, whatever it is. But they just couldn't get enough stops last night, and a lot of them, it wasn't, the last 8 shots weren't just ridiculous, oh my gosh, I can't believe it.
Right.
Where you play great defense for 22 seconds, they take a prayer at the end of the shot clock and it goes in. It was pretty basic stuff that they just, and they put Rudy in a little bit of a blender because they had him coming all the way out there. That's the thing you probably have to figure out.
Well, and that's tough because of who their big man is.
Totally Sabonis.
Sabonis is very versatile, as versatile as anybody in the league. Kind of a poor man's Joker.
Yeah, and so I get it that it's a little bit of a tough matchup, but it was just it seemed like so easy for them. And then it's in classic 2025 Wolves fashion. They get the breaks where guys miss just enough free throws.
Yeah.
They get it to 3. They've got the ball with 5 seconds left. They bring in everybody's favorite passer, the Australian, Ingles. So everybody loves that. And then he throws it to McDaniels, who just boots it out of bounds.
Yeah, that was not a good play.
That's just Wolves basketball. You can't execute the end-of-game play. It ends up in Jaden's hand, and he's not doing anything from the corner with 5 seconds, let's be honest. And he boots it out of bounds, and I hit power on my TV, and I went to bed. You just knew it was over. And that's there's so many disappointing parts about it, but you look at the clutch numbers that are coming up now. Everybody does this. They're always in these close games. I think they've got 31 of them.
Yeah, they're what is it, 42%?
Yeah, I think
winning percentage.
Whatever
in that
13
stretch?
and 18 is. Because I think that's what their record is. It's in the neighborhood.
That tells you everything, really.
It does, and they've just had too many against not great
23
teams.
now, overall.
Just not great teams, and it's just
and we're in the stretch where we talked about that. They really, starting with Atlanta, that was Monday, Jan 27. They won that game. Then they had Phoenix. Then they had Utah.
The Phoenix game was an awesome game.
It was a very good game.
An outstanding game in performance.
Then they had Washington and Sacramento, the last. So they're now in this stretch 3-2. And now look what's coming up. Yeah, you have Chicago Wednesday. That certainly should be a win. But then you got Houston. Although I think they've got some people out, they're still good.
The second-year kid they have had
tremendous.
A triple-double last night, I think. Some crazy number.
Portland, at Cleveland, Milwaukee, Oklahoma City, at Houston, Oklahoma City, Oklahoma City. Mm-hmm. So now you're back. You're very soon. Well, you could say starting with Thursday, Feb 6, if you want to. You're pretty much in the meat grinder, big time meat grinder. And again, you're still kind of just playing around with slightly better than 500. That again, you really can't lose either of these last two. And I know our top 4 scorers were out for the Washington game. That's still not enough for me. I think Washington had 6 victories. There's a lot of things we didn't do particularly well in that game. And yesterday was, I think, even worse because Sacramento's better, but we didn't do anything defensively. And we'll talk about it either in the top 5, if you have it on your list, or after.
I do.
A new suggestion about why we're fairly mediocre 500 team at home as opposed to the road. It's a new theory that I had not heard advanced previously.
I'll be ready for it.
It's there may be some truth to it, but I would put it into the classification of it doesn't matter. It's irrelevant, especially in the real world sense. So
I want that in the top 5.
All right, we'll include that in the top 5. And what else do you have for us?
We've got the Wild. We've got Gopher basketball, and the Twins have a free agent signing.